Hello and welcome back into our third and final installment of our topic today on the Reformation. The Catholic Reformation is going to be what we're covering today, or what's also known as the Counter-Reformation. So the Catholic Reformation really starts off because, again, we're seeing that because Luther and some of these other individuals that we talked about had called into question what the church was doing at the time, we see that the church is forced to react in certain ways. And the main driver of this is Pope Paul III. He has a couple of things that he does to basically try to fix the problems with the church at this point. He uses his cardinals to investigate the selling of indulgences and other abuses. So he sends the cardinals out basically to try to find where the corruption lies and where these abuses are taking place in order to correct them. He also approves the formation of the Jesuit order. And this was these religious followers of St. Ignatius of Loyola. And the Jesuits were, again, this order of individuals that their goal was they were missionaries. And this is done in kind of two main goals, was to try to convert non-Christians and also to spread recognition of the Catholic faith moving forward. We see a lot of Jesuits also are tied into churches and educational institutions, again, with this idea of trying to convert non-Christians, but also to, again, make sure that the academic side of theology was preserved moving forward as well. The Pope also uses the Inquisition, which had been used before, but he uses the Inquisition and inquisitors to remove heresy. So at this point, when they found problems related to improper church teachings, this would be removed in a much more proactive way than it was prior. And this is all really solidified with the Council of Trent. Pope Paul IV will convene his bishops and cardinals at a castle in northern Italy, in what is the city of Trento, in the Alto Adige part of northern Italy. And they basically come together to solidify what the church doctrine is moving forward. And they really come up with four things in the wake of the Reformation and these splits from the Protestant branches. What they say is the church teachings are still final, and the interpretation of the Bible from the church is what people need to work off of. They also say that faith and good works are what is needed to get you to heaven, so not faith alone, not this idea of doing good works. They also don't subscribe to the predestination idea. You need to do good things as well as believe in God to be able to get into heaven. The church also deems that any sort of tradition, rituals, anything that's been taught by the church as well as the Bible, they hold equal importance, and that they decide that the sale of indulgences is finally a banned procedure. So when we think about this and we think about kind of the legacy of the Reformation, you can break this down a couple of different ways. The most obvious is when you look at it through a religious or a social lens. You now have in Europe all these new Protestant denominations that are starting to flourish. And this is only going to continue into the modern day where we see lots of different types of Christianity globally. We also see that because of the Council of Trent, the Catholic Church is much more unified here moving forward. So instead of it being this kind of conglomerate, we now have a much more unified message on what the Catholic religion looks like. We see that both sides of Christianity, the Catholic side as well as the Protestant side in Europe, moving forward are much more focused on education as well, that there's an increase in colleges and universities that are tied into these different religious groups throughout Europe, and that's also going to increase the opportunities for further education throughout Europe. The one thing that really does not change entirely too much is the role of women, though. Largely unchanged in the eyes of all churches. You do have some examples of this where Queen Elizabeth, for example, is the head of her church. But again, those examples are kind of few and far between, and we really don't start to see a lot of modernization of church beliefs and treating women with equality really until much later. The other big thing that we see is political change, and this really comes from the shift in power of the Catholic Church. Prior to this point, you had the Catholic Church as a monolith. They were in control of a lot of power, and they were able to influence a lot of what went on in Europe. After this point, though, we're going to see that that influence declines, mainly because other parts of Europe are no longer Catholic. Parts of Eastern Europe, for long periods of time, had already been Orthodox, but now you have pockets of different countries like the German kingdoms, as well as the Netherlands and England, that are now no longer Catholic, so that influence declines. This also means that monarchs gain more power. And we start to see this shift. Instead of the kind of power of the papacy, we are now focused more on this nation-state building, where you have countries that really start to form at this point. And we'll talk more about this in the future. You also have people that just start to question other authority groups moving forward. And this really comes down to, hey, if the church was wrong about this or the church abused this, what else could be wrong about the world? And we'll focus a little bit more on this specifically, right? How could we be wrong about our place in the universe? So again, thank you for listening. I hope these notes were helpful to you as you understand a little bit more at the Reformation. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.